"Shut your trap, you old hack. Women like you should learn to keep your mouth shut," my sister-in-law spat venomously, her words piercing the air like barbed arrows. I stood frozen, aghast at the unprecedented display of aggression. Never before had I witnessed such crude language and physical intimidation from a woman, let alone from someone within my own family circle. She gripped my collar with a force that mirrored a man's, sending shivers down my spine. I had harbored hopes that marriage would mellow her fiery temperament, but alas, it seemed her volatile nature persisted. "My name is Helen, a 35-year-old homemaker. Since tying the knot 5 years ago, my husband Chris and I have been residing with my in-laws. Despite the challenges, they were kind souls, offering support with household chores while I juggled a job. Chris, my partner in life and age, alongside my father-in-law, were pillars of strength in our family unit, staying united through thick and thin. We decided to follow the path our parents had trodden, opting to live under the same roof as my in-laws, just as they had done. The idea was floated by our elders, suggesting it as a viable arrangement. While I understood that many women might balk at the idea of cohabiting with their in-laws, I found solace in the familiarity of a bustling household. Having grown up in a family of 12, the notion of solitary living seemed alien and disconcerting to me. Thus, when the proposal was put forth, I embraced it with genuine contentment. My in-laws were amiable folks, and I cherished the idea of perpetuating our harmonious coexistence. However, our domestic tranquility was abruptly shattered by a somber incident. My mother-in-law suffered a grievous injury outdoors, necessitating hospitalization. A heart attack had seized her as she descended a flight of stairs, causing her to tumble. Her physical agony was compounded by the frailty wrought by her heart condition. In light of these circumstances, I made the decision to resign from my job, assuming the role of a full-time homemaker. Balancing visits to the hospital with household duties, I found solace in the unwavering support of my father-in-law and Chris. Amidst the chaos, the return of my sister-in-law Sarah added another layer of complexity to our family dynamic. Sarah had long been the proverbial black sheep, casting shadows over our family harmony. At 33 years old, Sarah now divides her time between part-time employment at a clothing store and purported night shifts elsewhere. Prior to our marriage, my father-in-law had extended an offer to her: "If life becomes too burdensome, you're welcome to live with us." Yet she staunchly declined, citing a desire for independence. "I value my freedom too much to live under someone else's roof," she retorted, much to the chagrin of my in-laws. Sarah's penchant for irresponsibility had long troubled them, a trait that manifested early on during her school years. She was no stranger to conflict, often clashing with teachers and causing distress for my mother-in-law. Her tumultuous journey continued into college, marked by disputes with peers and even entanglements in extramarital affairs, much to the dismay of those around her. Despite my mother-in-law's assertions of Sarah's inherent honesty and kindness, her outward appearance, characterized by natural blonde locks and undeniable attractiveness, had been a source of adversity. Stereotypical biases against blonde women cast shadows over her academic endeavors, exacerbating her challenges. That's where it all began. The seeds of disillusionment sound deep within Sarah, particularly during her tumultuous years in middle school. The atmosphere was oppressive. Despite her innocence, her teachers cast judgmental gazes upon her, fostering a sense of unwarranted scrutiny. Feeling unjustly targeted, Sarah's demeanor and academic performance gradually deteriorated. I empathized with her plight, having experienced similar rigidity during my own schooling. A close friend with natural blonde hair had faced similar challenges, prompting me to advocate vehemently against such prejudiced treatment. Over time, my defiance softened the resolve of even the most obstinate educators. Recognizing Sarah's wounded spirit, I had hoped our family home would offer respite from the world's harsh judgments. Knowing her concerns for her ailing mother, I extended an invitation for her to accompany me to the hospital. Yet my optimism was swiftly dashed upon Sarah's arrival. Without a word of greeting, she appraised me with a disdainful glance, remarking, "Ah, you must be the housekeeper. I could use some tea." Instantly my father-in-law's ire was kindled, his voice rising in indignation. Sarah's apology to me, Helen, rang hollow against her subsequent disparaging remarks. "She's Chris's wife, not the hired help. Understood. And she's perfectly lovely in her own right," my father-in-law retorted, his disappointment palpable. The venom in Sarah's words, casting aspersions on my appearance and Chris's judgment, served as a stark reminder of the deep-seated animosity festering within her. Despite the rising tide of anger within me, I made a conscious choice to respond with maturity, offering Sarah a warm smile. "Hello, Sarah. It's Helen, Chris's wife. Remember meeting at our wedding?" "Ah, yes, weddings are magical, aren't they? They have a way of making even someone like you look somewhat presentable." My father-in-law's caustic remark reverberated across the room. "Sarah, that's enough." Chris's voice, tinged with surprise, cut through the tension as he descended from the second floor. It was evident he too had endured his fair share of clashes with Sarah in the past. Before Chris and I tied the knot, he had lent her money, a debt she not only failed to repay but also arrogantly dismissed his concerns with the assertion, "Listen to your sister because you're my brother." Since then, they had been locked in a silent battle of wills, exchanging glares whenever in proximity. Undeterred by the palpable discord, Sarah persisted in her disrespectful demeanor. Without so much as a word of inquiry about her mother's well-being, she proceeded to bark orders at me. "Hey, you there, make some tea pronto. And fetch some snacks while you're at it. When I'm ready to emerge, everything better be laid out." "Understood." The icy stare of disapproval from Chris was all the response she garnered. "Helen isn't a housekeeper. If you persist with such disrespect, you'll be asked to leave." My father-in-law's voice resonated with authority. "Aren't you supposed to be concerned about Mom? She's in the hospital, isn't she? Shouldn't you trust the doctors to care for her? How can you truly grasp the extent of her suffering, the severity of her illness, or the nature of her injury if you refuse to even visit her? Mom has always worried about you, Sarah. Wouldn't it be a comfort for her to see your face, filled with life and warmth?" With a resigned sigh, Sarah retorted, "I have no interest in the woman who gave birth to me, especially not because she's blonde." My father-in-law rose abruptly, his voice thundering, "Your mother is not to blame. Do you have any idea how many times she has cleaned up after you, how much love she has poured into you? Have you ever considered my feelings? No one understands the pain of being whispered about, of being judged from a young age. I shouldn't have even bothered coming. I came here to discuss engagement, and now I'm thoroughly irritated." Sarah's demeanor froze, as if she were trapped in a perpetual state of rebellion. As Sarah made her way toward the front door, intent on departure, I hurried after her. "Congratulations on your engagement, Sarah," I called out, hoping to bridge the growing chasm between us. Ignoring my attempt at civility, she pressed on, eager to escape the confrontation. Yet I refused to let her slip away without one final plea. "Are you truly not going to visit your mother?" I implored, hoping to stir some semblance of family responsibility within her. To my surprise, Sarah halted in her tracks, her expression a mix of annoyance and disdain. "You're so irritating. I came here to discuss my engagement to a wealthy man," she retorted sharply. Understanding dawned upon me, and I offered a heartfelt apology. "I see. I'm sorry for intruding. It's wonderful that you found someone special. But remember, a person's worth isn't determined by their occupation. Whether they save lives, provide livelihoods, or nurture families, every job holds value in our society. Your father and Chris are your family. Don't belittle them for their choices." As the words left my lips, Sarah's countenance twisted with unmistakable hatred, her eyes burning with resentment as she glared at me. Before I could react, Sarah seized me by the collar, sending a shockwave of fear coursing through my body like an electric current. "Shut your trap, you old bag. Housekeepers like you should learn to keep quiet." Her words pierced through me, leaving me trembling with terror. My heart constricted painfully in my chest, rendering me speechless with fear. I struggled to vocalize my distress, but my voice failed me, drowned out by the overwhelming sense of dread. As Sarah's grip loosened, a wave of relief washed over me, allowing me to draw a shaky breath. "I'm burning my fiancé over next week. Make yourself scarce and act like a proper housekeeper. Understood?" Sarah's parting words were delivered with venom, punctuated by the resounding slam of the door. I clung to the hope that her aggression would subside once she was married. It was a comforting thought, albeit tinged with uncertainty. 3 days later, a momentous event unfolded. While strolling through the neighborhood on a routine shopping trip, I stumbled upon a scene that tugged at my heartstrings. In the park, a young girl, on the cusp of starting elementary school, sat hunched over, her tear-streaked face buried in her hands. "What's the matter, sweetie?" I inquired gently, concern etched into my voice. I lost my mom," she whimpered in response, her distress palpable. Drawing upon my own childhood antics, I recalled the countless times I had inadvertently wandered away from my parents' watchful gaze, only to be swiftly reunited with the help of my vigilant siblings. "Where were you when you got separated?" I asked, my tone soft and reassuring. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty. After learning her name, I gently took her hand and began calling out loudly for her mother as we traversed the park. Fortunately, our search yielded swift results, and we soon located the distressed parent. With tears of gratitude shimmering in her eyes, the woman profusely thanked me for my assistance. Upon closer inspection, I realized she was none other than an old classmate from my school days. "Emma, is that you?" I exclaimed in disbelief. "Wait, are you Helen Wilson?" she replied, her tone mirroring my astonishment. "That's my maiden name," I confirmed, a flood of memories rushing back at the sound of her voice. "I can't believe it's you, Emma. I'm sincerely sorry for the trouble," I apologized, feeling a pang of guilt for the inconvenience caused. "My daughter was chasing after a bird, and I lost sight of her. Thank you so much for helping us reunite," Emma explained, her voice tinged with relief. After sharing a hearty laugh, Emma and I couldn't shake the feeling that our chance encounter was more than mere coincidence. We exchanged contact details, pledging to catch up over coffee sometime soon. Although we had been classmates, we hadn't mingled much due to differing social circles. Yet, as adults, I sensed a missed opportunity for a potential friendship blossoming between us. The following day, I met Emma at a quaint cafe. Like me, she was a devoted housewife, her daughter currently navigating the realms of kindergarten. As we delved into conversations about our shared past and recent happenings, the hours slipped away effortlessly. However, when the topic of marriage arose, a flicker of concern crossed my features. My older brother is finally tying the knot, but I can't help feeling apprehensive. The woman he's marrying had quite a reputation as a troublemaker in our neighborhood. I confess, a hint of worry lacing my words. Perhaps she's turned over a new leaf. If your brother sees something in her worth marrying, let's hope for the best, Emma offered reassuringly. Then, with a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she dropped a bombshell. "By the way, did you know that my brother had a crush on you, Helen?" I was taken aback, my mind reeling with surprise. "What? But we weren't even in the same grade, were we?" I exclaimed, my mind racing to reconcile Emma's revelation. "You were quite the catch, Helen. You had everyone swooning over you. Did you know that even the guy I had a crush on wasn't you?" Emma disclosed his name, triggering a faint memory of his face, though I had never realized his feelings for me. "I admit I may have felt a twinge of envy toward you back then, but it's all water under the bridge now. I'm glad I finally spilled the beans," she chuckled, a sense of relief evident in her demeanor. "Well, this certainly complicates things. I always assumed the popular Helen would end up with the mature Chris," I mused, Emma's words prompting a trip down memory lane. Chris and I were indeed classmates, but like with Emma, we never really crossed paths. He was little more than a familiar face to me. However, at our reunion a decade ago, Chris confessed, "I've had a crush on you since we were kids." That's when I realized I wanted no one else but Chris. And here we are, happily married, I concluded with a smile, grateful for the twists and turns that led us to where we are today. Soon, it was time for Emma to collect her daughter, signaling the end of our tea time together. Later, during my visit to the hospital to see my mother-in-law, the topic of Sarah naturally arose. Concern etched across her face, my mother-in-law insisted I must be discharged immediately, attempting to mobilize despite her frail condition. "Since Chris is away on a business trip today, my father-in-law and I will take charge. We'll ensure Sarah's partner undergoes thorough scrutiny in place of my mother-in-law," I assured her firmly, prompting a chuckle from her. Witnessing her resilience, I resolved to tackle the impending marriage introduction with renewed determination. Come Saturday, Sarah arrived with her fiancé in tow. As memories of last week's altercation with Sarah flashed through my mind, a tremor of apprehension coursed through me. Nevertheless, I summoned my resolve and greeted them with a forced smile. Sarah's fiancé, a burly figure with a commanding presence, seemed taken aback upon seeing me, though the reason eluded me. Inviting them inside, my father-in-law and I exchanged pleasantries with Sarah's fiancé in the living room. However, as I busied myself boiling water, the exchange between my father-in-law, Sarah, and her fiancé unfolded in the living room. Regrettably, I missed catching his name amidst my tasks. Upon my return with the tea, I resolved to properly greet him. However, as I set the cups on the table, Sarah's taunting smirk caught me off guard. Isn't it amusing to have this woman as our housemaid? She's essentially working for us, free of charge. Quite the joke, don't you think? Sarah's words sliced through the air, stinging with disdain. To hear such disparagement during our marriage introduction was beyond comprehension. Sarah's audacity left me speechless, though my indignation simmered beneath the surface. Thankfully, my father-in-law wasted no time in reprimanding Sarah. "Sarah, that's enough," he admonished sternly. Attempting to diffuse the tension, Mike interjected with a gentle tone. "I apologize. Sarah, why do you refer to her as a housemaid?" Despite his outward calm, Mike's disapproval was palpable as he fixed Sarah with a stern gaze. Unfazed, Sarah continued her tirade. "Well, that's precisely what she is, isn't it? Just look at her, hair tied back in a simple knot, wearing cheap clothes and an outdated apron. And don't even get me started on her makeup. I bet it's all bargain bin brands. She hasn't changed a bit since the last time I saw her. It's as if she's given up on herself, content to blend into the background like some forgotten woman." My father-in-law seemed on the verge of erupting into a full-fledged outburst, while Mike appeared visibly shaken, his complexion draining of color. "Don't you realize we attended the same grade school?" he interjected, his voice tinged with disbelief. "When Sarah was in 7th grade, she should have been in 9th. I assumed everyone in the neighborhood knew that." My father-in-law's response was tinged with regret. "It appears my daughter's interests lie primarily with herself. I apologize," he conceded, leaving both Sarah and me perplexed, unable to grasp the context of their cryptic exchange. Attempting to clear the air, I turned to Mike, seeking clarification. "Do you happen to know who I am?" I inquired, prompting a smile from him. "My apologies for the delayed introduction. You were Helen Wilson before marriage, correct?" "I'm Mike. My sister recently mentioned meeting you." "Oh, and Emma, your sister, mentioned her brother's impending marriage. I never imagined it would be with Sarah," I exclaimed, my astonishment evident in my voice, perhaps a touch too loud. Curiosity piqued, I pressed further. "What did you mean by people in the neighborhood knowing about me? Is it because I come from a large family?" Mike chuckled at my inquiry. "There are numerous reasons," he replied cryptically. "Didn't you know, Mrs. Wilson, you were quite the local legend. Not only were you charming, but you also stood up to the toughest teachers, earning their respect. You served as student council president in both middle and high school, and rumor has it you turned down over 300 suitors. That's just scratching the surface of your reputation." As Mike's words sunk in, a flush of embarrassment crept up my neck, surely turning my cheeks a bright shade of crimson. "Oh, come on, that's an exaggeration," I protested, attempting to downplay my supposed achievements. "Sure, I come from a large family, but I hardly did anything remarkable in school. And as for rejecting suitors, it's more like 5, not 300. Actually," Mike interjected, "my sister mentioned how you stood up for a classmate with naturally blonde hair, challenging the prejudice against them. Your actions may not have instantly changed attitudes, but they certainly made an impact." Sarah's sharp retort cut through the air. "But weren't Helen and I in different schools? I always felt like an outcast," she countered, her voice tinged with bitterness. My father-in-law intervened, gently guiding the conversation back on track. "Sarah, Helen attended the same school as you," he clarified. "Despite the gradual shift in attitudes towards blonde-haired students, your decision to dye your hair various colors only exacerbated tensions with the teachers." His words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of the choices that had shaped our respective paths. Sarah's expression morphed from shock to a disturbing grin. She processed the implications of her actions. "So, if I hadn't dyed my hair, blonde would have been acceptable," she mused aloud, a hint of incredulity in her voice. However, her demeanor quickly darkened as she redirected her attention to me, her tone dripping with condescension. "Helen, despite your vibrant school days, look at you now, a mere housewife, devoid of any sense of style," Sarah taunted, her words laced with disdain. "Taking care of your mother-in-law and managing household chores must be quite the burden. You may have had your glory days, but now, there's nothing to boast about. This is what happens when you settle for an office worker like my brother. It's quite pitiful, really. Whereas, look at me, I'm the real winner," she crowed, punctuating her diatribe with a mocking laugh. Before my father-in-law could interject, I spoke up, determined to assert myself. That's merely your perspective, isn't it? I countered calmly. I find immense joy and fulfillment in my current life. I'm surrounded by a loving husband and supportive in-laws. Yes, caring for my mother-in-law while she's in the hospital can be challenging, but it's a responsibility I gladly shoulder. I am committed to ensuring her well-being, even beyond my own share. Ultimately, her health and happiness are what truly matter. Sarah's demeanor softened as she averted her gaze. Truth be told, fashion doesn't interest me, she admitted quietly. Sure, dressing up might please my husband, but beyond that, it serves little purpose. As long as we have enough to get by, I'm content. Back when I lived with my parents, we were barely scraping by. I still remember the cramped quarters shared among the 12 of us. Compared to those days, our current situation feels like paradise. Mike stood a little taller, addressing my father-in-law with sincerity. Sir, I must apologize. Originally, I came here to seek your daughter's hand in marriage. However, after hearing Sarah's sentiments, I've come to the conclusion that I am not suited to be her husband. Please forgive my abrupt change of heart. My father-in-law's response was measured yet understanding. Given the circumstances, it's evident that not many would be keen on marrying Sarah, he acknowledged. I will protest if you choose to call off the engagement. Please accept my sincerest apologies for any inconvenience caused. Mike offered another apology before rising from his seat. Sarah, who had remained tense throughout, suddenly sprung into action, seizing onto Mike's leg. Hold on a minute, you're the one who proposed, aren't you? She exclaimed, her voice trembling with desperation. How can you speak of calling off our marriage so casually? I won't tolerate living with someone who demeans my brother's wife and ridicules her in our own home. My family consists of my brother, his wife, and my sister, and I refuse to let them be hurt by your behavior. Rest assured, I'll treat your family with kindness. That's a given. In response, Mike's tone hardened. So, you tailor your behavior based on others' status? You look down on those you consider beneath you and fawn over those you perceive as superior, he accused, his disappointment palpable. I regret not seeing this side of you sooner, but now that I know, I can't continue to love you. Please release my leg if you understand, he implored gently. With those words, Sarah relinquished her grip, sinking to her knees as tears streamed down her face, overcome with emotion. My father-in-law and I left Sarah to her emotions and escorted Mike out. Following that incident, Sarah decided to move out of the house once again. Historically, whenever she encountered financial hardships, she turned to my father-in-law for support, and he'd rarely assist her. However, given her recent disrespect towards my mother-in-law and her treatment of me as a mere maid, he made the difficult decision. My father-in-law made a firm decision not to extend any financial assistance to Sarah, regardless of her pleas. It appears Sarah now works in a clothing store, seemingly having outgrown her previous ventures into night work. However, her job doesn't seem to provide the means for her desired designer purchases, leaving her in a tough spot. Her blatant pursuit of money has left her with few allies willing to lend a hand. After being deserted by Mike and met with cold indifference from my father-in-law, Sarah sought solace from my mother-in-law. It's disheartening to witness how she resorted to tears and manipulation, attempting to elicit sympathy and financial aid from the ailing woman. Despite her own health concerns, my mother-in-law was moved by Sarah's display, but she ultimately made the difficult choice to sever ties with her. Since then, Sarah has vanished from our lives. Following my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital, I became her constant companion, offering support as she adjusted to using a walking stick. Determined to make her daily life more manageable, I began seeking out ways to streamline household chores, ensuring her comfort and well-being. As my efforts to assist my mother-in-law gained recognition from my in-laws and Chris, expressions of gratitude flowed freely. I should be the one thanking all of you. Your support has been invaluable to me, I humbly responded, met with warm smiles from all around. Their appreciation brought me immense joy, fueling my sense of fulfillment. Maintaining regular contact with Emma, our occasional coffee outings provided moments of respite amidst the daily routines. However, the most significant news came when I discovered I was pregnant. The excitement and joy reverberated throughout the family, with my parents and siblings joining in the celebrations. I'm truly grateful for the outpouring of love and support from everyone. While I know the journey of childbirth and raising the child will present challenges, I am eager to embrace each moment with gratitude and cherish every precious memory, I reflected, filled with anticipation for the journey ahead.